Hey everyone, I'm Jarrod Gingras from the Real Story Group, and I'm at DAM San Diego, and it's my pleasure to introduce you all to Carin Forman from HBO. Carin, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So Carin, you and I have been on the DAM circuit for quite some time now, but tell the folks at home how you got into the DAM world.
Absolutely. So I joined the entertainment space in about 28 years ago, and in doing that 28 years ago, I worked for the Discovery Channel. And when I started there, I was under the 100th employee, and we wore many hats in those days. We could do marketing, we could do line production, we could do others. As the Discovery Channel evolved into other networks like TLC and Learning Channel and Discovery Animal Planet, I recognized that we were shooting about 30-to-1 shooting ratio in the industry, and that we had all this other material on the cutting room floor that we could make ancillary programming from. And in doing that, I wrote a plan to index and digitize all of our owned video material so that we can sort of commoditize it and look at other lines of business way back in the day. My first show that I worked on was working with production at Discovery Channel, where we cut 10 30-minute pieces narrating with Donald Sutherland from B-roll content for Animal Planet. Nice. So it was a very exciting time, and then I recognized that we could do other lines of business. We could do a line of business of stock footage photography. We could do a line of business of video. We were getting requests for people to purchase photography or video for other things. That morphed into airlines and other cruise ships calling us to have our content in their space. And then that further morphed into our international market looking for photography as well, photography and video. So in doing that for many years for Discovery Channel and getting into program sales and doing MIP and MIPCOM and all of that with them, I wrote this business plan in the late 90s to start a digital asset management application at Discovery Channel. And when I wrote that business plan in 1999 to start at the Discovery Channel, we went with an application, and at the time it was an open text solution, and we just started putting content in and using smart metadata, and I just approached it from a user perspective. As a line producer, as a photographer, how did I need to find my assets? I needed to show it by keywords, by show name, by this, and I just started to use a little bit of what I call CS 100, Common Sense 100. How do I want to find my assets? And we started plugging them in. And sort of that was the evolution of me in 1999 getting into a digital asset management role. And at that time, Discovery Channel offered me the opportunity to stay in production or to move into DAM. And I decided to take that damn opportunity.
Took a right turn, huh? And so how did that lead you to HBO?
So from 1999 to the early 2000s, I worked for Sony Entertainment. And I was commuting back and forth, building multiple co-location facilities where they were trying to launch an online movie channel based on Blockbuster, and it was called MovieFly. Sony was leading that effort. I did it for a couple years, and unfortunately the effort didn't translate at the time. The internet wasn't the robust where you can stream video. We really couldn't do it at an early stage.
You were early to the game.
We were too early to the game. So as a result of that, that position expired, and I took an opportunity back with Discovery Channel. And I went back to Discovery Channel for 6 years, which I call my second tour of duty there. Yep. And in doing that, my total focus was in the IT side on making their DAM more robust. So I spent the last 6 years of my career focused in IT. And in doing that, I realized I really missed the creative side of the business. It was really what passioned me. The IT and the DAM was sort of self-sufficient to find my creative assets. And then in about 10 years ago, almost 10 years to the date, I got a call from a wonderful colleague at HBO who had heard me and seen me, and we had collaborated on some past projects through digital asset management, and asked me to join HBO on the technology side. So I spent my first 2 years in my career at HBO doing digital asset management and technology, and I exclusively supported the marketing team. And so life became full circle. After 2 years of exclusively supporting the marketing team and working with them, I joined the marketing team 8 years ago. And 8 years ago, I took over the photo team, in which we had 400 or 500 hard drives of physical material, because that's how you stored assets back then. We had to put drives in and out to get to our content. And that's when I began the media supply chain for HBO to ingest, digitize, tag, metadata, all their photography at HBO.
Wow. So we'll get into that supply chain in just a few minutes, but as we were getting set up today, you're on this side of the camera today, but oftentimes at HBO in your role, you're on the other side of the camera.
Correct.
So what does your team do on that side of the camera?
Sure. So for HBO, my team shoots, produces, edits, tags, works with talent, works with publicity, clears, ingests, retouches, distributes all photography for HBO and Cinemax, and we're going to be working on some of the new programs coming out for HBO Max as well.
Completely end-to-end.
The complete media life cycle. Up until a couple months ago, I just had photography for HBO, and that was the whole photography life cycle of shooting, producing, editing, and moving on. And then I handed it off to another gentleman at HBO who, what I call, did the slicing and dicing onto platform. That has recently come under my purview, so I do have the whole life cycle for photography and the whole media supply chain for photography.
So that sounds fun to me, is it?
It's great. You know what? I love the creative and I love the opportunity, and it's been interesting in my career to watch me sort of roller coaster and weave in and out of creative and technology, but they still go hand in hand. And I think that my creative interests and my creative desires and my creative passion allows me to be better on a technology role, because I could speak, I think, of some of the marketing people. I understand how they want to find their assets. They don't want to go into a library-based system and do a very rich search. They want to be able to easily find their assets. And so they don't want to go into, do I have to think about what show this is from or what's this number? They want to go in like a Google search and do things. So I think I have a nice balance of understanding the creative workflow, but understanding the distribution channels.
Yeah, I think you hit on it. I think that's my favorite part of the DAM space. It's like you have the technical side of the house, you have the creative side, you have the process side, you have the analytics and data side, and you have experience in all those areas, which makes you the perfect person to give the keynote here at the DAM conference. Tell us, what did you speak about yesterday in your keynote?
I think a lot of the theme at this particular conference in San Diego this year is really a pivot from even last year. Last year it was about streaming and content and metadata and tagging. And I think this year, if you hear it, the pivot is really media supply chain. So I tried to touch on some of the media supply chain, and I think the pivot is media supply chain because we have so many new players in the space. Netflix is always really core to what what HBO does and being a competitor in our space. Sure. Apple TV is now launching, and Disney Plus just recently launched. Sure. We have Amazon Studios coming in. So I think the interesting buzz on the media supply chain is that. So a lot of my speech was sort of that new evolution of the media supply chain, and how do you get content from what I called script to screen. Yeah. And I think even going further, which is wonderful about having the creative element under myself, is how do we change the way we shoot? How do we change the way we do things? So if we know things are going to end up going digital, how do we sort of bring that up front in the life cycle? So I think it's really wonderful to have that whole supply chain under myself, and we can think, how do we creatively make better product, and how technically do we do better in pushing it out through the distribution channels?
No, it makes sense. So given what you just said there, how does DAM play? What role does DAM play in this whole thing, and how does it change since you first did that DAM project back with Discovery back in many moons ago?
Many moons ago. I think DAM does in many ways and will sit in the center of what we do. DAM is the enabler. Yep. It's kind of the technical brain of our assets. And no DAM tool is going to hold all the solutions. So I think it's how do we use that center of the universe, that DAM solution, to sort of orchestrate that media supply chain. I say that because we have rights systems. We have databases that do other things. We have systems that hold other information around HBO. We're not going to put that into our DAM, but we need DAM to orchestrate it. So I think it's really playing a key role. And I think it's played a role that has allowed us to scale. I think that rather than having 15 minions that are going to be tagging metadata, we can use DAM technology to do some of these things. So I think the key is to how do you do things smart, centralize those assets so that you can push things out in a formulaic, programmatic way. So I think DAM is playing a very key role for us right now.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I think when we talk to clients in every single industry, I always point to the studio space, because you're doing it at a scale that's just quite unparalleled to some of the worlds that they live in, and that's where they want to get ultimately, but they're just at stage zero. But you can't be at stage zero. That's your business. You've evolved to this point. You're leading the way, and I think that's good for the rest of the world that to have people like you to come tell that story, because I think it's very valuable. So I know you've been doing this a long time, but the world's changed. You know, we do have streaming is so important today, but beyond that, social has become so important in the way people consume content. You know, they want little bite-sized snippets, and people are trying to consume as much as they can before even the release of a title, I imagine, right? And so when you think about the chain of events that need to happen and to satisfy the cravings of people at every stage of a release, you know, how does that impact your world?
It impacts our world creatively and technically. And I think because we are well positioned in the DAM space, I think we've been fairly successful at it. So let me give an example. Red carpet. We run a red carpet event. We know how to shoot the photography. We know what people are going to want. And we know we need to get talent approvals coming off the red carpet. So how do we enable that? It might be a red carpet event. We might have a digital tech with us. We're shooting the photography. Approvals are happening on site. They're being pushed out. They're being retouched. They're going through our DAM. They're going out to somebody who's on standby, a program person who's on standby to receive those assets, and then then their responsibility is to take it over the finish line and make the goal onto social, you know, Twitter, Facebook, wherever these contents are going. Instagram's a big one for us, you know, wherever they're going. So it's just really understanding the life cycle, understanding how DAM plays in, and just really honestly having really good people around us. And my team, we stay in our lane. We shoot the photography, we index it, we digitize it, we move it out, and then handing it off to the next, you know, the player who's going to take it over the line for us.
And how many people would you say actively interact with the DAM on your team?
We have about 1,000 users of our DAM, and I would say actively interact is probably, you know, a smaller subset of that.
Sure.
And I only say that is because you have specialists. The DAM can be complex. I think that number is going to increase and change a little bit. So I think it's going to increase because now that we are Warner Media, I think we're going to start to centralize it and try to figure out how to, you know, bring those all together into a central asset. I also think we're going to have new projects coming up, like how do we build portals? How do we build custom views? How do we how do we use our DAM continuing to be in the central of the brain, but maybe make a video portal so that any of the teams who need video assets or photo portals or logo portals, or maybe it's one giant portal with different subsections. But I think we're going to start to relook at, you know, how do we, you know, centralize that? And I think HBO is, you know, pretty on our way in doing some of that.
That's great. I think that's huge. I mean, we see it every day where people are asking about how can we improve the omnichannel experience of people that are interacting with our with our assets, and more the DAM is playing a pivotal role there. So I'm curious, you know, when you think about creating consistent experiences at every single touch point, is that something that you have conversations with your team about, and like how you can store your assets and put the right metadata on your assets to be able to create those optimal experiences no matter where people are coming in viewing your assets, whether it's a social channel or an email or a website or a portal or on the big screen, you know?
Absolutely. So I had the pleasure of enjoying your speech this morning on the Omnichannel, and it's so true, because here's the challenge. If you had told us 2 years ago that Disney Plus was going to pop up, we would all say no. If you said that Amazon was going to go from what we thought as a retail marketplace to a studio, we wouldn't have known some of these things. So I think we don't know where these things are cropping up, and it's not just where our content is popping up, but where's the content popping up for our syndication partners? Amazon not only is their own studio, but we syndicate and electronic sell through our content through them as well. So I think it's that omni-channel presence that you mentioned of we don't know where it's going. So what I try to do is build a Swiss Army knife, right? And I try to say, what content do we need now? What metadata do we need now? How do we need to store the assets now? And what material? And I think it's really about having a flexible metadata model and bringing in your content, you know, and really tagging and adding rich metadata to your material so that if we do need to pivot or we need to send it to one of these new channels or distributions in the sources in the future, we are better positioned to do that.
Yeah, and every organization, whether you're a media company or you're not, in today's day and age, you are content producers, and you're not just publishing to your own platforms. You may be publishing, just like you are, to third parties where you have to give up some control. But I think your point about we're building for an unknown future is really important. And I'm thrilled to see what you have done at HBO, and the fact that we have someone like you as a leader in this industry, I think it does us all a service. So thank you very much for that, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
And thank you, and we'll see you at the next DAM conference.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you guys
Thanks,
having
Carin.
me.